చేసేసి Good morning, dear students. Today we will be discussing about the applied physiology of temperature regulation. The learning objectives are, we would be discussing about fever whenever there is a elevated body temperature, hyperthermia, and whenever there is a decrease in the body temperature, there will be hypothermia, frostbite. So today we would be discussing about the fever, different types of fever, and hyperthermia, the differences between hyperpyrexia and hyperthermia, and whenever there is a decrease in body temperature, that is hypothermia and frostbite will be discussed. So what is fever? The definition is, it is an elevation of the body temperature that exceeds normally daily variation and occurs in conjunction with an increase in the hypothalamic set point, that is 37 degrees centigrade to 39 degrees centigrade. So this is important, hypothalamic set point. There will be increase in the body temperature beyond this limit, that is 37 degrees centigrade to 39 degree centigrade. So what are the different causes for fever? Etiology, that is hot environment, excessive exercise, drug induced. Neurogenic factors like injury to hypothalamus, chemical substances such as caffeine and cocaine, which are directly injected into the bloodstream, and as you all know, certain infectious diseases and inflammation and severe hemorrhage. These are all the etiological factors which cause increase in the body temperature, that is fever, which is also termed as pyrexia. Now coming to the classification of fever, the different types of fever. One is intermittent fever, remittent fever. These are the different types of fever, that is continuous type, intermittent type, remittent type, and relapsing types of fever. So what is continuous type? In this, the temperature will be elevated beyond the normal temperature range, and the fluctuation is not more than 1 degree centigrade. Okay, so this doesn't remit the character of this type of continuous fever. And the examples for this type of continuous type of fever is seen in typhoid fever, typhus drug fever, and malignant hyperthermia. Malignant hyperthermia is a type of fever which is caused due to certain drugs, iatrogenic this is. So the next type is intermittent fever. Here in this, temperature falls to normal every day. That is, the temperature will be elevated as well as the temperature falls to the baseline. And this type of fever is seen in pyogenic infections, lymphoma, and biliary tuberculosis. The other type of fever is remittent. Here the temperature is elevated above the normal range, and the daily fluctuation here is greater than 2 degrees centigrade, and the temperature doesn't return to normal. This type of fever is not characteristic for any particular disease. The other type of fever is relapsing. Here the temperature returns to normal for days before rising again, and this type of fever is seen in malaria. You have tertian quatern fever, and tertian, that is the 3 days pattern. Fever peaks every other day. That is happens in cases of Plasmodium vivax and Plasmodium ovale. Quatern type of fever, that is the 4-day pattern. This will be seen fever peaks every third day, which is observed in cases of Plasmodium malaria, as well as in lymphomas, that is Hodgkin's lymphoma, and also in pyogenic infections. So these are the different types of fevers. One is continuous type, intermittent type, remittent type, and the relapsing type of fever. See here the difference between the intermittent fever. Intermittent. Here the temperature is elevated above the baseline, and the temperature touches the baseline. It is not continuously elevated above the baseline. Here it reaches the baseline, which is seen in cases of pyogenic infections mostly. Okay, this is remittent fever. Here the temperature is being elevated above the normal range, and the fluctuation is more than 2 degrees centigrade, and the temperature never reaches the baseline. The temperature never reaches the baseline in cases of remittent fever. Same is the situation in continuous fever, where the temperature will be elevated above the baseline. It doesn't reach the baseline, but the fluctuation is less, that is less than 1 degree centigrade. So these are the differences between the different types of fever. Here one more picture showing the intermittent pattern of fever, that is the intermittent fever. Fever that touches the baseline for a few hours during the day, which is seen in, as we have already discussed, this can be seen in malaria, acute pyelonephritis, local boils, furuncles, kala-azar, sepsis. All pyogenic infections, mostly seen in intermittent type of fever, seen in pyogenic infections, that is, the fever is raised, the temperature is raised, and it will be reaching the baseline for a few hours during the day. That is a specific feature of this type of intermittent fever. So what is sustained fever? The temperature remains continuously elevated above 38 degrees centigrade and demonstrates little fluctuation. Sustained or the continuous fever, same. Relapsing fever, periods of febrile periods interspersed with acceptable temperature values. That is, periods of fever are interspersed with periods of normal temperature. Here, this is one period, this is the other period, and during this there is a relapse. Here the temperature reaches the baseline, which is seen most commonly in malaria. So here the temperature is elevated for a certain period. Again the temperature drops to the baseline, and again the temperature will be elevated for another period of time, which is most characteristically seen in different types of malaria, where we have 3-day pattern, 2-day pattern, as well as 4-day pattern seen in different types like Plasmodium vivax, ovale, and Plasmodium falciparum. All this, this is most characteristic type of fever, that is a relapsing type of fever, same where there is a period where the person will be free from the elevated body temperature. That is why it is termed, this is the relapsing period. Here the temperature has been elevated during this period as well as during this period. And also in certain lymphomas, this type of fever will be seen. So what are these? Intermittent fever, that is the temperature returns to acceptable value at least once in 24 hours. That is here intermittent fever. It is reaching to the baseline. Okay, here the temperature has been elevated and reaching to the baseline. That is characteristic of intermittent pyogenic infections mostly. Most important infections. We note this intermittent type of fever in pyogenic infections, lymphomas, and miliary tuberculosis. The other one is remittent fever. Here fever spikes and falls without a return to the normal temperature levels. Here the remittent type of fever. Here the fever is rising as well as falling, but it never reaches the baseline. Again rising, again falling, but it doesn't touch the baseline. So remittent type of fever, this is not characteristic of any infection, but observed in many types. So here the daily fluctuation is more than 2 degrees centigrade and the temperature doesn't return to the normal. Continuous fever, here the fever is present continuously, but the fluctuation note here, the fluctuation is not more than 1 degree centigrade. Here in remittent type of fever, the fluctuation is more than 2 degree centigrade, and continuous fever, here the temperature never touches the baseline. Here also the temperature never touches the baseline, whereas here also the temperature never touches the baseline. In intermittent, it touches the baseline, as well as in relapsing, the temperature returns to normal for days. Remember this, for days before rising again. So these are the different types of fever. So patterns of fever. This is the modality of a temperature curve, differ depending on the causative pyrogen. The increase or decrease in the amount of pyrogens results in fever spikes and declines at different times of the day. The duration and degree of fever depends on the pyrogen strength and the ability of the individual to respond. This serves as a diagnostic purpose. Now coming to the signs, and usually before going to this, the fever is usually caused, why it's being caused, why the body temperature is being elevated. It is being elevated mostly because of the release of the pyrogens such as interleukins and the cytokines, mostly interleukins 1 and 6, that we have already discussed in the previous class. Now what are the signs and symptoms of fever? Here you have the flushed face will be flushed, hot dry skin, anorexia, headache, nausea and sometimes vomiting, constipation and sometimes diarrhea, body aches, as well as scant, highly colored urine. So these are the signs and symptoms of fever. Here you have the symptoms and signs of baby fever, where the baby is crying, refuses to drink or eat, and here the baby, you can see vomiting, nausea, vomiting, and skin rash, typical of certain fevers. Skin rash you can see in cases of typhoid fever, as well as dengue fever. All this where you can notice this in certain types of fever, different symptoms will be signs. You can elicit different signs. So these are the common signs and symptoms of typhoid fever, where you have fever, that is the elevated body temperature, headache, eye pain, a rash, back pain, muscle aches, as well as joint pains. As well as the other symptoms and signs are increased heart rate, respiratory rate and depth, shivering, where you can notice pale cold skin, as well as cyanotic nail beds. These are the signs and symptoms of fever. Now coming to hyperthermia. What is hyperthermia? This is elevated body temperature due to failed thermoregulation that occurs when body produces or absorbs more heat than it dissipates. So here the temperature ranges greater than 37.5 to 38.3 degree centigrade. So this occurs mostly due to, here the body temperature has been elevated due to failed thermoregulation. Okay, that occurs when body produces or absorbs more heat. This is external factor mostly. Hyperthermia, external factors are responsible for the elevated body temperature. So what is the difference between hyperpyrexia versus hyperthermia? Hyperpyrexia, you have elevated body temperature where the temperature is increased to about 41.5 degrees centigrade, and here the thermostat will be set above the normal body temperature. This generates heat to achieve this temperature, and examples for this hyperpyrexia is intracranial hemorrhage, sepsis, and thyroid storm. Hyperthermia, here the body temperature rises above its set point. Set point, the hypothalamic set point will be maintained at the normal range, that is at about 37 degree centigrade. Set point is at the normal level, but thermoregulatory mechanisms fail. So the body temperature will be elevated in this case. This occurs mainly due to external factors such as heat stroke, neuroleptic malignant syndrome, where heat stroke, where the person is exposed to high environmental temperature. Here hyperpyrexia, this occurs mostly internal. Here the thermostat set point will be set above the normal body temperature. That is the reason why here you can see the increased body temperature. So within the body, the changes are occurring, the pyrogens will be released, and that results in increased body temperature. So hyperpyrexia and hyperthermia. Causes of hyperthermia syndromes. One is heat stroke, most important. This occurs when the person is exposed to sun or high environmental temperatures for a prolonged period. And this is a dangerous heat emergency with a high mortality rate. Here you can see the heat stroke clinical features when the person is exposed to high environmental temperatures. Here the body temperature is elevated to about 40.6 degrees centigrade or 105 degree Fahrenheit. And what are the different clinical features? Here you can see anxiety, which leads to confusion. Skin is hot and dry. Sweating is impaired. Listlessness. Sodium and potassium depletion occurs. And because of cerebral edema, you get seizures, that is convulsions, delirium, and coma. And also the other changes which are seen are the increased pulse and the respiratory rate, hypotension. So these are the clinical features when a person is exposed to high environmental temperature. So here the body temperature is elevated more than to about 40.6 degrees centigrade or 105 degree Fahrenheit, which is very serious. The normal is about 37 degrees centigrade, and here it is 98.6 degree Fahrenheit. So there is a wide variation in this raise in the body temperature. And so accordingly, what you can see, anxiety, which leads to confusion, skin is hot and dry, and there will be lots of vasodilation leading to sweating, leading to sodium and potassium depletion, and sweating is also impaired at this stage, and you can see listlessness. And because of cerebral edema, you can see the seizures, delirium, and coma. So how to manage this particular case? Management is by cooling, rest, fluid, and electrolyte support. So the body temperature should be brought back to the normal levels. It can be brought back by cooling, rest, fluid, and electrolyte support. So this is the most important cause, that is heat stroke, responsible for hyperthermia syndromes. The other one is the drug-induced hyperthermia. Here you have the psychotropic drugs such as MAO inhibitors, that is monoamine oxidase inhibitors. Psychotropic drugs causing raised body temperature. So what medications can cause malignant hyperthermia? These are the various medications which can cause a malignant hyperthermia. Most important is a halothane, isoflurane, sevoflurane, N-fluorine, methoxyfluorine, desflurane, and ether derivatives. These are the ether derivatives which can cause malignant hyperthermia. The other drugs which can cause hyperthermia are tricyclic antidepressants, amphetamines, selective serotonin uptake inhibitors, narcoleptic agents, antipsychotic phenothiazines, haloperidol. Antipsychotic phenothiazines. So these are the narcoleptic agents such as antipsychotic phenothiazines and the haloperidol. So these are all the drug-induced drugs. These are the different drugs which can cause hyperthermia. Most important one is a heat stroke. The second one is a drug-induced hyperthermia. Third one is endocrine causes. Endocrine causes which can elevate the body temperature. Here, as you all know, thyrotoxicosis. Thyrotoxicosis, in which the increased basal metabolic rate, BMR, is increased, that leads to elevated body temperature. As well as pheochromocytoma. This is one more condition where you can see this hyperthermia. So the other conditions, central nervous system damage such as cerebral hemorrhage, status epilepticus, and hypothalamic injury all lead to hyperthermia syndrome. So how do you manage this condition? Medical management. Acetaminophen. This is also termed as paracetamol. Acetaminophen in adults about 325 to 625 milligrams is given 4 to 6 hourly. And in children, it is about 10 to 15 milligrams per kg body weight, which is administered 4 to 6 hourly. So paracetamol or the acetaminophen. The other one is ibuprofen, which is an NSAID. And here in adults, the dose is 200 to 400 milligrams, 4 to 6 hourly. And in children, it is 5 milligrams per kg body weight, 4 to 6 hourly, which is administered. Ibuprofen, okay, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug, which is being administered. And the other drugs are indomethacin and naproxen. Okay, these are all anti-inflammatory. This is mostly, this decreases the body temperature mostly by decreasing the inflammation, anti-inflammatory. Indomethacin, naproxen. Acetaminophen, it is antipyretic. Aspirin, adults, the dose is 325 to 650 milligrams 6th hourly, and in children 10 to 20 milligrams 6th hourly. Glucocorticosteroids can be administered, potent antipyretic as it inhibits the prostaglandin E2 synthesis. Chlorpromazine used in severe hyperthermic patients. This is important. This has to be noted. This chlorpromazine, which is used in severe hyperthermic patients. So once again, it is acetaminophen or the paracetamol. The dose, adults, mostly it is we administer above 40 kg weight. We give about 625 milligrams, which has to be administered 4 to 6 hourly per orally. Orally, it has to be given. And in children, 10 to 15 milligrams per kg body weight, 4 to 6 hourly. And the other one is ibuprofen. That is non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug. It decreases the body temperature by decreasing the inflammation. And the adult doses 200 to 400 milligrams, 4 to 6 hourly. And in children, it is 5 milligrams per kg body weight. Administered orally 4 to 6 hourly. Indomethacin and naproxen. And here it is aspirin, glucocorticosteroid, and chlorpromazine, which is used in severe hyperthermic patients. Assessment. How to assess fever. Monitor the vital signs. What are the vital signs? Pulse rate, blood pressure, respiratory rate, and the temperature. These have to be assessed. And assess the skin color and the temperature. You can see the cyanosis. Cyanosis can be seen. Skin color has to be assess whether there is cyanosis, cyanotic nail beds, or the cyanosis near the lips, tongue. All these areas have to be observed. And also they monitor WBC count, that is white blood count, hematocrit values, and other pertinent lab reports or indication of infection or dehydration. So now coming to management of fever and hyperthermia. Provide adequate nutrition and fluids to meet the increased metabolic demands and prevent dehydration. Most important is adequate, as electrolytes will be lost. Adequate nutrition and fluids have to be given orally in cases of mild rise of body temperature, and in cases of high increased elevated body temperatures, IV fluids have to be administered. And reduce, the other activity which has to be reduced is a physical activity. Reduce the physical activity to limit heat production, especially during the flush stage. So provide a tepid sponge bath to increase the heat loss through conduction. This sponging is very important. This provides most of the cooling. So body temperature returns to normal by this method by about 1 degree Fahrenheit. So this is the immediate measure which has to be followed. Tepid sponging bath has to be given to the patient. Provide dry clothing and wet linens. Remove excess blankets when the patient feels warm, but provide extra warmth when the patient feels chilled. And antibiotics, whenever you suspect inflammation, infections, so antibiotics have bacterial pyogenic infections, antibiotics have to be administered. So now coming to what is fever of unknown origin. This was defined by Peterson and Benson in 1961 as having the following features. This is also defined as pyrexia of unknown origin, fever of unknown origin, or pyrexia of unknown origin. Here the temperature is elevated to about 38.3 degrees centigrade, that is greater than 101 degree Fahrenheit in several occasions. These are the criteria to be called it as pyrexia of unknown origin, and the duration of fever lasting for more than 3 weeks. This duration is important. Duration lasting for more than 3 weeks, and failure to reach a diagnosis despite 1 week of inpatient investigation. This is important. To reach a specific diagnosis despite 1 week of inpatient investigation, still you are not able to conclude what is the main etiology for this fever. So idiopathic, the etiology is mostly idiopathic. When the fever is beyond 38.3 degrees centigrade, that is greater than 101 degree Fahrenheit, and the fever which is lasting for more than 3 weeks, then this has to be termed as pyrexia of unknown origin. Causes of fever of unknown origin. Here it is infections, neoplasms, collagen vascular or the hypersensitivity diseases, inherited and metabolic diseases, thermoregulatory disorders. These are the different causes, that is the etiology for unknown pyrexia of unknown origin. Mostly it is bacterial infections, which could be osteomyelitis, pyelonephritis, abscess, infective endocarditis, tuberculosis, cat scratch disease, and typhoid fever. Bacterial infections. It could be bacterial because of these bacterial infections. Mostly you can suspect infective endocarditis, tuberculosis, abscess because of some abscess. The fever is persisting for more than 3 weeks. Pyelonephritis, typhoid fever. All this have to be put in mind. Then coming to viral infections, different viral infections can also cause this pyrexia of unknown origin, that is Epstein-Barr virus, cytomegalovirus, enterovirus, adenovirus. And coming to the malignancies, which can cause this leukemia, lymphoma, and neuroblastoma. These all can lead to this condition. Autoimmune disorders such as juvenile idiopathic arthritis, systemic lupus erythematosus, SLE, inflammatory bowel diseases. What are the inflammatory bowel diseases? Crohn's and the The other one is Crohn's disease is one, and ulcerative colitis. These can also lead to pyrexia of unknown origin. The other miscellaneous conditions such as Kawasaki disease, drug fever, and periodic fever. Most important, you have to remember in the bacterial infections, remember about this pyelonephritis, infective endocarditis, tuberculosis. Viral infections, try to remember this Epstein-Barr virus, cytomegalovirus. Malignancies, you can remember this leukemia. Autoimmune disorders, try to remember inflammatory bowel disorders, systemic lupus erythematosus. So coming to the diagnosis of pyrexia of unknown origin. History has to be taken, history of the patient, how it started, whether a sudden onset, insidious onset, and physical examination has to be done. You have to examine in a generalized manner, and blood investigations such as tumor markers and serological studies have to be done. Peripheral smear, multiple samples for the culture and sensitivity, X-ray studies in cases of tuberculosis. Here, tumor markers, as we have discussed in cases of leukemia, lymphomas, all this can give you a conclusion whether it is due to malignant conditions. Okay, so serological tests, typhoid fever can give you a diagnosis. Then bone marrow biopsy in cases of malignant conditions, liver biopsy, CT scan, computed tomography, MRI, that is magnetic resonance imaging, and ultrasonography. So these are the advanced techniques which have to be done in cases of if the fever is extending beyond 3 weeks, when the duration is more than 3 weeks. These are all the different investigations which have to be done, such as the initial blood investigations, tumor markers to exclude the cancerous or the malignant conditions, serological tests, peripheral smear, multiple samples per culture and sensitivity. So X-ray studies in cases of tuberculosis, bone marrow biopsy, again to exclude the malignant conditions, liver biopsy, CT scan, MRI, and ultrasonography. So what is the treatment of this condition? Continuous observation and examination. Here, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs and glucocorticoids have to be administered, and do not start with immediate antibiotic therapy as it can delineate the cause of pyrexia of unknown origin. Fluoroquinolones and piperacillin have to be administered. When no underlying source of infection is found, even after 6 months, the prognosis is generally good. So that was about pyrexia of unknown origin or fever of unknown origin. Now the conditions which can lead to decrease in the body temperature. What happens? You see this condition. This is one condition, hypothermia. Hypothermia, what do you mean by this? What is the definition of this hypothermia? So hypothermia is a state in which the core body temperature is lower than 35 degrees centigrade and 95 degree Fahrenheit. At this temperature, many of the compensating mechanisms to conserve heat begin to fail. So what is this normal range of temperature? Till 100 degree Fahrenheit, this is considered to be as normal. 96 to 100 degree Fahrenheit, 96 also. Though it is a normal set point of the thalamus is about 98.6 degree Fahrenheit or 37 degrees centigrade, still we can consider this 96 to 100 degree Fahrenheit can be considered as to be as a normal range. Mild hypothermia, when do we call it to be as mild? When the temperature is about 90 to 95 degree Fahrenheit. And a severe hypothermia, less than 90 degree Fahrenheit, then it is termed as severe hypothermia. So what are the clinical features of this hypothermia? In mild hypothermia, you can see the shivering, and the patient may appear drunk and denies any problems. And in cases of moderate hypothermia, you can see uncontrollable shivering, increased confusion, increased heart and the respiratory rate. In severe hypothermia, there will be muscle stiffness, shivering stops in this condition. You can see this collapse, decreased level of consciousness. So, and this can deteriorate to unconscious state. So these are the different clinical features in cases of hypothermia. Most important is the shivering, which is noticed in mild hypothermia. Here, shivering is the thing which you can notice in cases of mild hypothermia. Whereas in moderate hypothermia, uncontrollable shivering. Also confusion which is noticed in cases of moderate hypothermia, and increased as well as increased heart and the respiratory rate. In severe hypothermia, what happens? The patient may collapse. In this condition, the shivering stops, muscle stiffness can be noticed, as well as a decreased level of consciousness, and the patient can deteriorate to unconscious state. So what are the causes of etiological factors for hypothermia? Exposure to cold environment in winter months and colder climates. This is the most important cause for this hypothermia. Occupational, the other one is the occupational exposure seen in cases of skiers, sailors and climbers. And the other causes, as you all know, endocrine dysfunction. These are the things which you have already dealt with. That is in hypothyroidism. Hypothyroidism, when the T3, the T4 hormones are reduced and leading to reduced BMR. So that leads to decrease in body temperature. The other one, adrenal insufficiency. Adrenal insufficiency. These are the two endocrine disorders which can cause hypothermic conditions. The other one is hypoglycemia. The other causes are medications. Medications such as ethanol, phenothiazines, and barbiturates. So these are the medications which can cause hypothermia. The other causes are neurological injuries such as trauma, cerebral vascular accident, that is CVA, cerebrovascular accident, subarachnoid hemorrhage, and sepsis. So these are the neurological insults which can lead to hypothermia. So most important is the exposure to the cold environment in winter months and colder climates, and see occupational hazard which is seen in these type of persons such as the skiers, sailors and climbers. Remember, as you all know, you can easily remember these two conditions, that is hypothyroidism and the adrenal insufficiency, endocrine dysfunction disorders. The other one is hypoglycemia, and medications, at least remember barbiturates. And neurological insults, try to remember trauma, cerebrovascular accidents. These two you have to remember, and sepsis. These are the conditions which can cause hypothermia. What are the signs and symptoms? As we all know, mild hypothermia, the patient is lethargic, shivering is there, lack of coordination, pale, cold, dry skin, early rise in heart rate and respiratory rate. And in severe hypothermia, there is no shivering, cardiac arrest can be observed, and loss of voluntary muscle control, low BP, that is the blood pressure is reduced, and undetectable pulse and respiration. So what is the management? How do you treat this condition? Continuous monitoring, a rewarming of the subject, and supportive care have to be given to the patient. What is rewarming? In this you have two methods, that is the passive method and the active method. In the passive method, this involves the use of blankets to cover the body and the heat, body and head to trap the heat being lost. So blanket should be, the patient should be covered in blankets to trap the heat being lost. And the other one, active, this involves external as well as internal. Here active, the application of outside heat to raise the body temperature. External method is by heat blanket or forced hot air system. Blankets or hot air has to be supplied, has to be provided to the patient. The internal method is by introduction of warm fluids into the body. Warm fluids have to be administered, and warm IVF, intravenous fluids, have to be administered to the subject. The other condition, so now we have studied about hypothermia that occurs because of decreased body temperature, and the other condition is frostbite. What is frostbite? This is a condition in which the tissue temperature drops below 0 degrees centigrade. Here the temperature drops below 0 degrees centigrade. It results in cellular and the vascular damage. Body parts more frequently affected by frostbite include digits of feet and hands, tip of the nose, and the ear lobes. These are the most important parts which are being affected by the frostbite. That is the digits of feet and hands, tip of the nose, and the ear lobes. So what are the different predisposing factors? Contact with thermal conductors such as metal or volatile solutions, immobility, careless application of cold packs, and vasoconstrictive medications. These are the predisposing factors for this condition of frostbite. Classification of, now coming to this classification of frostbite, we have 4 degrees of frostbite. In the first degree frostbite, this causes only anesthesia and erythematic tissue. The region you can see this erythema where the skin is red, that is erythema, will be seen in this case of first degree frostbite. Second degree frostbite, appearance of vesicles, superficial vesiculation surrounded by edema. So here you can see the vesicles in second degree. Third degree frostbite is hemorrhagic vesicles. The vesicles, initially they were just vesicles. Here you can see the hemorrhagic vesicles due to serious microvasculature injury which further leads to cyanosis. So this is the first degree. First degree frostbite where you can see the erythema. It mostly involves the palms, hands. Okay, so this is the first degree frostbite. This is the second degree frostbite where you can see the vesicle formation. Vesicles will be formed in this type, second degree. So here you can see the clear blisters, numbness and burning pain. Entire epidermis is being involved. Skin is red in fair individuals. Grayish discoloration will be observed in darker skinned individuals. Clear blister formation at 24 to 36 hours followed by sheet-like desquamation. Persistent cold sensitivity in this area. So this is a vesicle formation or the blister formation, and the skin is red in fair individuals, and the grayish discoloration which is observed in darker skinned individuals. So, and tissue freezing injury frostbite, that is the first degree, you see this hyperemia and edema. Second degree, you see the vesicles, and here there is partial thickness skin necrosis. In third degree, you see this full thickness skin necrosis, and in fourth degree, skin, muscles, and the bone necrosis will be observed. Fourth degree frostbite, damage in the subcuticular, muscular, and the osseous tissue. This is involving to the depths. So subcuticular structures, muscular, as well as the osseous, bony structures will be involved in this, and that leads to gangrene. This is the thing which is seen in the fourth degree frostbite, where it leads to gangrene also. So management. Now coming to management of frostbite. So how to treat this condition? Before thawing, remove the patient from the cold environment, stabilize the core temperature, treat hypothermia, protect the frozen part, and do not apply friction or massage. Most important is it, protect the frozen part and do not apply friction or massage. During thawing, parental analgesics such as ibuprofen has to be administered. Immerse the part in 37 to 40 degrees centigrade circulating water containing an antiseptic soap for 10 to 45 minutes and encourage the patient to gently move the part. So this is important. Immerse the part in 37 to 40 degrees centigrade circulating water containing an antiseptic soap for 10 to 45 minutes. And after thawing, gently dry and elevate it. Apply pledges between the toes. If clear vesicles are intact, aspirate the fluid. If broken, then debride and dress with antibiotic. If the vesicles they are broken, then debride that part and dress with an antibiotic. Analgesics such as ibuprofen 8 to 12th hourly has to be administered. And tetanus prophylaxis also has to be administered. So hydrotherapy at 37 degrees centigrade, hot fluids such as tea and coffee which stimulate have to be given to the patient, and no smoking has to be advised, and artificial respiration if the patient is unconscious. So thank you. So these are the different applied physiology of temperature regulation. Hope you have understood, dear students. And so once again, we'll just go back what we have dealt today. So what is this? Applied physiological aspects. One is that is fever or pyrexia. As you all know, this is the elevation of the body temperature that exceeds the hypothalamic set point about above 37 degrees centigrade to 39 degrees centigrade. Etiological factors are the hot environment, excessive exercise, and the drug-induced. Neurological factors such as injury to hypothalamus and caffeine and cocaine. Infectious diseases and inflammation and severe hemorrhage. These are the etiological factors. Classification of fever, the different types, as you all know. One is a continuous type of fever, intermittent type of fever, remittent, and the relapsing. 4 types you can see. Continuous, here the body temperature has been elevated beyond the normal temperature, but the fluctuation in temperature is not more than 1 degree centigrade. And the examples for this is most important. Remember typhoid fever, typhus, and the drug fever. The other one is the intermittent type. Here the temperature falls to the normal daily. You can see this falling to the normal. Here this is the intermittent type falling to the rise, fall, and reaching to the baseline. So that is the intermittent type of fever, mostly observed in, remember, this pyogenic infections. The other one is a remittent fever. Here the daily fluctuation is greater than 2 degrees centigrade and temperature doesn't return to the normal. Here this is a rise of the body temperature, fall, and it is not reaching the baseline, and the fluctuation, remember, it is more than 2 degrees centigrade. More than that, the fluctuation you can observe in this type, that is a remittent, and it's not characteristic for any particular disease. A relapsing type of fever, here the temperature returns to normal for days before rising again. So most important pattern observed in cases of malaria and this Hodgkin's lymphoma. So this is a relapsing fever. Relapsing fever, here there is a rise in body temperature during one period, and here is the relapse where the temperature falls back to the baseline. Again there will be a rise in the body temperature. So what are the different signs and symptoms of fever? One is the flushed face, hot dry skin, anorexia, headache, nausea, GIT will be involved, where you can observe this nausea and sometimes vomiting, constipation, diarrhea, body aches, scant, highly colored urine. These are the different signs and symptoms of baby fever. The baby will be irritable, crying, and refuses to drink or eat because of nausea, vomiting, and skin rash observed in certain types of fever. So these are the signs and symptoms of typhoid fever, where you can notice this fever, that is rise in the body temperature, where the subject has headache, eye pain, rash, back pain, muscle aches, and the joint pains. as well as the other signs and symptoms of fever are increased heart rate, respiratory rate and depth, and shivering, pale cold skin, cyanotic nail beds. Hyperthermia. Now coming to what we have, this is elevated body temperature due to failed thermoregulation, where the body produces or absorbs more heat. This is the important point which has to be noted down. Produces or absorbs more heat than it dissipates. So failed thermoregulation. Temperature ranges greater than 37.5 to 38.3 degrees centigrade. These are the differences between hyperpyrexia. Here the thermostat, the set point will be above the normal body temperature. Here the body temperature will be raised above the set point. Set point is at the normal level itself. The examples for this is heat stroke. The example for this is sepsis. So what is heat stroke? Prolonged exposure to sun or high environmental temperatures, and it's a emergency situation which has to be dealt immediately. The temperature has to be brought back to the normal. So here, when the subject is exposed to the high environmental temperatures, you can see there's an increase in body temperature more than 40.6 degrees centigrade or 105 degree Fahrenheit, where you can see the skin is hot and dry, anxiety leading to confusion, sodium and potassium depletion, all these clinical features. Management is mainly by cooling the part, rest, fluid and electrolyte support. So what are the different drugs which can cause a malignant hyperthermia? Most important is the halothane. The others, if you can remember, well and good, isoflurane. So these are the different drugs. Drugs causing hyperthermia. Tricyclic antidepressants. These are the different drugs which can cause hyperthermia, drug induced. So the other causes for hyperthermia are the endocrine causes such as thyrotoxicosis, pheochromocytoma, central nervous system damage such as cerebral hemorrhage, status epilepticus, hypothalamic injury. So medical management is by acetaminophen, that is paracetamol, ibuprofen, indomethacin, naproxen, aspirin, glucocorticosteroid and chlorpromazine, which is used in severe hyperthermic patients. And the assessment, here you have to assess all the vital signs, assess the skin color and monitor all these counts. And the management of fever and hyperthermia, provide adequate nutrition and fluids to the subject, reduce the physical activity and provide a tepid sponge bath, most important. So antibiotics have to be administered in cases of sepsis. So fever of unknown origin, where the temperature is elevated beyond 38.3 degrees centigrade over a duration of 3 weeks. And the causes are, as you all know, bacterial infections, viral infections, malignant conditions, autoimmune disorders. Such as bacterial infections, most important, pyelonephritis, abscess, infective endocarditis, viral infections, Epstein-Barr virus leading to this. So diagnosis is by history taking, most important. Investigations have to be done, tumor markers to exclude the malignant conditions. All these diagnostic tools. Treatment is by mostly observation and examination, and glucocorticoids have to be administered to the patient. Hypothermia. Now coming to this hypothermia, where the body temperature is less than 35 degrees centigrade and 95 degree Fahrenheit. As you all know, mild hypothermia 90 to 95 degree Fahrenheit, severe hypothermia less than 90 degree Fahrenheit. So what are the causes for this? Exposure to cold environment, occupational exposure, endocrine dysfunction, medications, neurological injury. Mild hypothermia, the signs and symptoms are shivering, pale, cold, dry skin, early rise in heart rate and respiratory rate. Severe hypothermia, there is no shivering, cardiac arrest, and undetectable pulse and respiration. So the management for this is rewarming. Frostbite, here the condition in which the tissue temperature drops below 0 degrees centigrade, which results in cellular and vascular damage, and this is observed mostly in the digits of feet and hands and tip of nose and the earlobes. So these are the different conditions: first degree frostbite, second degree frostbite, and here is the fourth degree frostbite. So how to treat this condition? Treat the hypothermia, remove the patient from the cold environment, and you have to immerse a part in 37 to 40 degrees centigrade circulating water containing an antiseptic soap for 10 to 45 minutes, most important. So these are the things which have to be followed. If you see this vesicles, aspiration has to be done, fluid has to be aspirated. If the vesicles are broken, then debridement and dressing with antibiotic has to be done. Okay, dear students, thank you very much for listening this lecture with lots of patience. Thank you. See you again.